Hey folks, welcome to Unqualified, the fantasy football podcast that's been trying to decide on an intro since
2017.
2017. It's been a long year. I'm your producer, Rob Diesendorf, here with Sean Brady and Scott Johnson, two fantasy football rivals that have been sabotaging each other for years, but they decided to come together to help you win your league and make your friends look like idiots. How's it going, fellas?
Great. That's way better than the first take you did.
Yes, much better. We're off and running now.
Yeah, whatever else you were doing there.
I had something in my throat. I was trying to clear my throat.
Don't do it again, please. Don't even try. Don't even explain. Forget it. Moving on.
I'm not trying to explain it. It's just what happened.
So we've been having a tough time introing this pod, kind of like most teams had a tough time introing their 2017 seasons. A lot of ugly football out there. A lot.
What a week it has been, huh?
So this week kicks off our weekly episodes. So obviously this week we're going to be talking about week one, basically the structure that we're going to do, and we're probably going to stick to this the whole season, but open to change. At least for week one, we're going to give our reactions to week one. So basically we're going to talk about injuries for each position, guys that outperformed their projections this week, and then underperformed their projections. Then we're going to be talking about waiver wire. Sean's going to be taking the lead on that. Waiver wire guys that can help you win week two and on. And then also guys to look out for, longer term for the season. And then also we're going to look at preview for week two. Each position, matchups we like, matchups we dislike, and the streaming options for defenses too. Had to put that in there. All right, so overall reaction, honestly, very weird week. Defenses, again,
Crazy.
Scored a lot
Always
of points.
is.
Yeah. Big news. One of the biggest pieces of news is whatever. David Johnson, pretty much the first or second overall consensus pick, running back on the Arizona Cardinals, got hurt, dislocated his wrist, and looks like to be out for a little while here.
Oh man, what a blow to every player's team that owns David Johnson. You can't replace this guy. It's just a huge black cloud hanging over your team right now if you own him. And if you don't, really make a lot of moves that help your team, you're in bad shape the rest of the year.
Yeah, so the news on Monday is that he, again, dislocated his wrist. He's likely out for a couple of months, probably the whole year, honestly. The fantasy season goes until week 13. It sucks if you had him first or second overall. If you have an IR spot on your team, I would put him on there and then pick up his backups. That's an easy pick there. I would also hang on to him if you have a spare bench spot. If you need a player, you can think about dropping him if he's definitely out for the season. But I would wait until he has a surgery to absolutely 100% drop him. You never know if he could come back on a random week here and there. His backfield mates, we got Kerwin Williams, who's probably the next guy up. A bunch of nobodies, really. They might re-sign Chris Johnson. They might sign a couple of guys Ryan Matthews. But it's looking ugly. I think Kerwin Williams is the next guy up, but it's not a good situation right now. I think you need to pick him up, though.
Exactly. Just to kind of wrap that up with a little bow for you, because we don't want to talk too much about the negatives this week. There's a lot of them, trust me. We'll get to them. But as far as David Johnson's concerned, it's not looking good. And when we talked about handcuffs a couple weeks ago, I mentioned how I didn't think there was a locked in handcuff for David Johnson, just because I mentioned if he goes down, you're not going to replace him with one guy. I don't think Arizona can replace him with just Kerwin Williams. I think Andre Ellington will get a little bit more touches, but I don't think any of these Arizona running backs are really going to be anything more than flex plays for the rest of the year.
Yeah, let's talk about I want to get through all these injuries. We could go into more detail after.
Sure.
I think that's smart. But Allen Robinson, wide receiver on the Jacksonville Jaguars, tore his ACL, out for the year. So basically, Allen Hurns and Marquise Lee are the next.
Suck it up.
Put some ice on it. And suck it up. Allen Hurns and Marquise Lee should be the next guys up. Moving along, Kevin White, wide receiver on the Chicago Bears.
Oh, you
made
hate
of
this
glass,
guy.
literally made of glass. Yeah, I can't wait to drop his ass. Broken scapula or shoulder blade, whatever it is. He's out for the year, so fucking drop him. He sucks.
Broken scalpel.
Scapula. Scalpel.
Scapula.
Wide receiver Danny Amendola on the New England Patriots got another concussion, which is a lot for him. I think that's like his fifth one or something, or fourth one.
It's getting dangerous at this point. Honestly, I'll cut in real quick. If I was him, I would not be shocked if he started thinking about retirement, because this is getting a little bit crazy for this guy. He had serious concussion problems when he was on the Rams, and now another one. You never know like which one would be the one that really, starts making your brain deteriorate. It's getting scary at this point. I would consider it. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw him, in a couple of weeks, but I would also, it might be a smart move to start thinking about doing other things. And, that's just me, thinking as a guy that wants him to be a healthy human being.
Yeah, and we look at Wes Welker on the New England Patriots. He was a longtime Patriot. He had a ton of concussions too in that same role. So obviously Amendola wasn't on the Patriots for that long, but similar situation. Wes Welker had to retire.
These guys really need to start taking their vitamins.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Drink a little milk, take a multivitamin,
Suck
and
it
maybe
up.
this shit wouldn't happen.
Yeah, and just suck it up.
Dummies.
Walk it off. One guy that needed help walking off the field. Another guy, Danny
Nice
Woodhead.
segue.
Another Danny. Thanks for that. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it was too. Danny Woodhead, running back on the Baltimore Ravens, re-aggravated his hamstring. This guy's always hurt too. He had a torn ACL.
Yeah.
I think it was a torn ACL last year. Hamstring problems, re-aggravated it again. So he might be out for an extended period of time here. And then we have the tight ends. All three. I thought this was a typo. I didn't see this, but all three tight ends on the Houston Texans got concussions. Literally all three. They have three on the team. CJ Fedorowicz, who's the starter. Ryan Griffin, second stringer. Third stringer, Steven Anderson, all got concussions. That's true, right? That's not a typo.
It happened. It's actually, they're all in the concussion protocol right now. I think this says a lot about the Jacksonville defense. Those guys are vicious. They could be a really good defense, but I'd be terrified if I'm a tight end going up the middle against that team next week, which is we're going to get to when we talk about our matchups we don't like, Delaney Walker of the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah. And then one other guy that's very noteworthy, Odell Beckham Jr. sat out with an ankle issue. It was honestly a very good call by the Giants staff, but
I agree.
Tough not to see him out there.
Yeah.
That offense did not hum at all. They had no running game. Brandon Marshall looked overmatched as their de facto number one guy. Evan Engram, who's a good athlete as a tight end, didn't really do much. That team just looked terrible without Odell, so that's something to look out for. He should be good by week 2, but something to monitor.
I hope so. I own him.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people were counting on Beckham, to play, and they're obviously disappointed not to have him, but it could be a lot worse. We saw David Johnson hurt his wrist and then continue to play and clearly made it worse. That could easily have happened with Odell Beckham if he played this game, so I think it's definitely a great call by the New York Giants staff to hold him out. You don't need to lose your best player in week 1. You need this guy the whole year, not week 1.
Yeah. I think that's it for notable injuries, too. All right, we got through the injuries. Now we're going to talk about the blue chip players, how we're referring to them. These are guys that, first of all, we have the player of the week, and then we're going to go position by position, talk about the top 3 or 5 guys in each position, list off some stats, talk about their season-long fantasy value. So player of the week, Kareem Hunt, rookie running back for Kansas City, 17 rushes, 148 yards, 1 touchdown. 5 receptions for 98 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns against New England. Unreal.
This week will be known as either the week that David Johnson got hurt or the week that Kareem Hunt transcended his physical form and became a star in the galaxy. This guy was outrageously good this week.
Yeah, one awesome thing, too. We're going to go through these guys quickly, but one really cool thing about his stats was that Alex Smith looked for him in the passing game and looked for him deep, too. He looked for Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt deep. And before that, in like the 7 years he's been in the league, or 8 years or something, he's only had like 2 touchdowns that were longer than like 75 yards. He had 2 in that game.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that I took away from this is Kareem Hunt's scoreline could have been even better. The guy was so tired from running all over the Patriots defense that he, got pushed out of bounds, called from behind by, I think it was Stephon Gilmore late in the fourth quarter on an end around. He could have easily had another 20 to 30 rushing yards and another touchdown if he just wasn't so tired. So this guy can get even better next week. I don't think it's going to happen, but he easily could have had a 50-point week this week.
Yeah, and I don't think you sell him high. I think some people are asking, like, should I sell him high and get the most value out of him? I think you keep him all year. In Andy Reid's offense, 8 out of 11 years, he's had a top 10 running back, and it's looking to be 9 out of 12. All right, let's move on to quarterback position.
Buy the fucking dip.
Buy the dip. Yeah.
Well, he's the opposite.
He's not going to have nowhere to buy it anyway.
If you buy it, it's going to be really expensive, and I wouldn't sell it. Anyway, quarterback, let's do the top 3. So far, as of Monday night after the New Orleans-Minnesota game, we do not have the Chargers and Broncos game. Yeah. So as of whatever time it is, 10 o'clock on Monday night, the best quarterback that last week was Alex Smith, 28 for 35, 368 yards, 4 touchdowns. This is pretty much the stat line that like Tom Brady should have had. And I don't know what stock you're putting into it, but really good game.
I mean, we look at 2 of these top 3 guys and we see Alex Smith and Sam Bradford. That's like shocking
kings
to me. The 2 checkdown kings of the league throwing for 300 plus yards and 3 and 4 touchdowns. I mean, it's outrageous. I chalk this up a lot to really, really good game planning. These teams, this is one thing that I kind of want to stress to the listeners. These teams have had months to prepare for this first game. So you're going to see a lot of wacky stuff going on. I think these 2 stat lines are more of an outlier than a season-long trend, but I don't know. I mean, there's some really, really good signs for both of these offenses so far.
Yeah, the only thing I'm buying, I'm only buying Smith and Bradford in matchup plays like they had this week. They had really good matchup.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Alex Smith didn't even have a good matchup, but I think that was just an outlier. Matthew Stafford, another noteworthy one, 29 of 41, 292 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He started the game off shaky, but turned it around. Other notables are Carson Wentz, played against Washington.
He looked good.
Yeah, looked really poised. Made a nice little squeaking in and out play in the pocket and found Aguilar for a long touchdown. Matt Ryan had a good game again. Marcus Mariota and Derek Carr playing against each other had really good games, and which is really good to see. They both went down with injury last year. They look poised and ready to go for this year too.
Two of the best leaders in the NFL, Marcus Mariota and Derek Carr. Scott, I know you're going to love this because you love Mariota. I just heard this story this week that Marcus Mariota goes out with the Tennessee Titans players, like to the bars or whatever they do, and he doesn't drink. He's just always the designated driver. He always goes out, has fun with the boys, and then drives everybody home, makes sure they're safe. What a great guy. Great guy.
What a fucking boss. If you don't have him, go get him. Honestly, yes. Top 10 option. Oh God, no,
he's the real MVP so far.
You're the real MVP. Actually, Derek Carr is a really good guy too. If you're looking for the all good guy team, look for Mariota and Carr, and they're good players. They're going to be top 10. All right, running back position. Week 1, guys that were blue chips that did really well. Kareem Hunt, we already talked about him. He looks poised and ready for a huge season, a top 10 season. Another running back on Thursday, Mike Gillislee, New England, new guy there, new face, was on Buffalo last year. He had 15 rushes for 45 yards, 3 touchdowns. The good part about that was he had 4 carries inside the opponent's 5-yard line. So he's the goal line back there. Not going to catch anything, but standalone value looks pretty good.
I love this guy this year.
Easy. Simply said. Love it. Leonard Fournette, Jacksonville. He's going to get all those carries there. Chris Ivory and TJ Yeldon were nowhere to be found last week. This week, he had 26 rushes, 100 yards with 1 touchdown. And then in the passing game, he had 3 targets for 3 catches and 24 yards. So he's going to get a huge workload. The issue with him has always been injuries, so we'll have to see on that. But I think you feel good about him as your running back 1.
Yeah, I think the Jaguars are going to really look to just beat people up with their defense and then beat people up with their offense and Leonard Fournette. I think they're trying to take the ball out of Blake Bortles' hands. Smart move, in my opinion. So that's going to bode well for Fournette owners early in the year. My issue is that later in the year, that attrition might start to pile up, and you might see Fournette on the injury report week to week.
Yeah, and another thing is the passing game. This is one thing, too, to keep in mind. The passing game without Al Robinson isn't going to have a lot of deep threat. So you could make a case for selling him high, Fournette, for, I don't even know if you can get Kareem Hunt out of it. But if you sell Fournette high for maybe a stud wide receiver or stud quarterback, if you need one of those guys, you can make a good case for that. He had a really good game, but he might kind of not do as well the rest of the year. A couple other guys. So blue chip running backs, Tariq Cohen on Chicago. We're going to get to him in a little bit. But I want to talk about LaShawn McCoy because he's one of the few that was drafted in the top 10 that actually lived up to that status this week. Solid game. No touchdowns, but 22 rushes, 100 yards. Also got some action in the receiving game. The only thing is, who's the guy that vultured a TD? Big boy.
I think it was
Tolbert. There he is. He had like 12 carries and a touchdown. So kind of be on the lookout for him. Do you need to draft him or need to pick him up if you're a LaShawn McCoy owner?
I don't think so. I actually kind of like that Tolbert was so active. I think that's important because we talked about McCoy preseason. The only issue I have with him is his injury history. I think them using Tolbert is an effort to keep McCoy fresh as long as possible. So I kind of like that Tolbert was effective last week.
Yeah. Another blue chip guy that outperformed his projection, Todd Gurley. He looks back. He only had like a 2 or 3 yards per carry average, or 2.3, I think it was. But still got all the work. That team just ran over Indianapolis, so he should be another running back 1, probably top 10 or 15 season. He looked good again. All right, let's move along to wide receiver. So again, this section is blue chip players that did really well in week 1. Wide receiver, we just saw Stephon Diggs eat up New Orleans secondary. He had 7 targets, 7 catches, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns, and amazing end zone celebrations too.
This guy is so entertaining. He didn't do his gravedigger, which he should have, but you know what? I'll take what I can get from this guy.
Yeah. Another one, Tyreek Hill, 8 targets. He played on Thursday night against New England. 8 targets, 7 receptions, 133 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 rushes for 5 yards, but dynamic guy.
Yeah, I was kind of like shocked that Tyreek Hill had such a good game against the Patriots after Bill Belichick had, I don't know what, 5 months to game plan for this guy. I think that just shows how explosive this guy is. The Patriots have 2, in my opinion, 2 top 15 cornerbacks, and yet this guy still goes off for a really good game. He was explosive outside of the one really big play that he had also. I think this guy is an every week flex play, low-end wide receiver 2. The upside is just so tantalizing with this guy. So, Tyreek Hill owners can be very excited about their return on investment so far.
Yeah, and he kind of looks like Antonio Brown a little bit. He can line up anywhere. He was lining up in the slot. He was outside. He was rushing it. He's a really versatile guy, and he could have similar season to when Antonio Brown broke out the first year that he did. Moving right along, Antonio Brown, 11 targets, 11 receptions, 182 yards, no touchdowns, but the unquestioned number 1 guy for wide receiver, easy. 2 guys rounding out the top 5 for wide receiver blue chip guys week 1. Kenny Golladay on Detroit, rookie, 7 targets, 4 receptions, 69 yards, 2 touchdowns. This guy's huge. He's 6'4". He's not as fast as Megatron was, Calvin Johnson that is, but red zone guy. He's probably the tallest guy on the team, and Stafford gave him a lot of targets. 7 targets is really good for a rookie wide receiver debut.
The hype train is off and rolling. People love this guy. You get shades of Calvin Johnson, just a big physical receiver wearing, Detroit blue. Obviously, I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Calvin Johnson, but this guy is a serious red zone threat. Clearly has some deep ball chops as well. Marvin Jones had a touchdown, but he was kind of an afterthought in that game plan. I think Kenny Golladay is the number 2 wide receiver to own on the Detroit Lions. Golden Tate, noteworthy here. He still had a really, really good game. So, the Detroit passing offense is trending up.
Yeah, and Kenny Golladay looks like he's going to be he wasn't an every down player, but he looks like he's going to be pretty soon. So he should only go up from here. Rob, anything like funny about his name?
I don't know.
We're just going to move on.
I don't know what you guys were saying about any of that, but it sounded good. It sounded positive. It sounds like you guys know what you're talking about. So
Okay. About Kenny Galladay.
Maybe
Galladay.
Galladay is
All right,
about to
fine.
have a holiday. If maybe he'll go on.
Yeah,
maybe
that's
he'll
what I
do
was
so
like,
well he'll get a
trying
bonus and he'll use it on vacation when it's a holiday. Ooh, or maybe
I
he'll
was
get
trying
a
to say,
subscription to the
it's
Jelly
fine.
of the Month
We'll
Club.
just move on. Yeah, no, we'll move on now. Adam Thielen rounds out the top 5 so far as of Monday night at 10. 10 targets, 9 receptions, 157 yards. He wasn't even just a slot guy against New Orleans. He's Minnesota wide receiver. Him and Diggs ate them up, but he looks like he was all over the field too, getting deep balls from Bradford and in the slot as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give you all the props here. You were really hyping this guy up preseason, and he looks the part.
You guys
this year.
called a lot of. You guys
really,
made a lot
really
of
good
good
game
calls
for this guy.
So far, yeah, a couple of bad ones. We'll get to those, but
We're getting to them very soon.
I'm gonna start making calls
very soon, actually.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, you can do that. I don't even know if you can pronounce the names, but okay, it's fun. Do it on your Galladay. All right, that was terrible. Blue chip guys for tight end position. So just rattling off 3 here. Austin Hooper, Atlanta Falcons. He had 2 targets, which is a little disconcerting. 2 receptions, 128 yards, 1 touchdown. You want to talk about the stiff arm on that TD?
Oh my
Knocked
god!
over that Bears defender.
He literally it almost
Jacked
looked like he
him
picked
up.
him up with one hand and threw him to the ground.
Yeah,
while he was
look
running.
that up. Look it up if you didn't see it.
This guy is very explosive. He actually, on his other big catch, he stiff armed another Bears defensive back into the ground. This guy is really, really good. Obviously, the 2 targets is a little thin. But I think it just giving Matt Ryan another option in the middle of the field is huge. We saw last year at Alabama, Steve Sarkisian was Alabama's offensive coordinator. O.J. Howard was an absolute monster, and there's no reason that Austin Hooper can't have a similar role in the NFL this year. I think for those of you guys that ignored the tight end position during the draft, if this guy's available on your waiver wire, pick him up, plug him in every week. Even if he does get 2 targets, he's in a really good offense. So, this guy, definitely one of my waiver wire pickups. We're going to get to that in a little bit, though.
Yeah, really quick about Austin Hooper. That game was kind of weird. The Bears had the ball a lot in that game. I think time of possession they had more, obviously, but Atlanta's defense looked a little shaky. Atlanta got away from the run and kind of force-fed Julio, which they always do, but it was a weird game, so I think his targets will go up in the future, especially after what he showed in those 2 catches. Pittsburgh Steeler tight end Jesse James, 8 targets on the other end of the spectrum. 8 targets from Ben Roethlisberger, 6 receptions, 41 yards, 2 touchdowns. So obviously they traded for Vance McDonald 3 weeks ago. Didn't really matter. Jesse James looks like Heath Miller Jr., 2 touchdowns, which is awesome on 8 targets. A couple other guys to keep in mind. Jason Witten looked like a little resurgent game there against the Giants. Be on the lookout for Witten on the Dallas Cowboys. Also, Charles Clay looks to be Tyrod Taylor's only option on Buffalo as a pass catcher. Had a touchdown in that game against the Jets. Kobe Fleener, New Orleans tight end, had 6 targets, 5 catches for 54 yards, 1 touchdown. Again, resurgent year. He could be a top 10 or 15 option after we thought he would be last year. And then Zach Ertz, one other guy on the Philadelphia Eagles. 8 targets, caught them all, 93 yards. So pretty good, actually pretty good production out of the tight ends this week.
Yeah, I just want to kind of key in on Zach Ertz before we move on. I mentioned this preseason a little bit, but I love when a young tight end and a young quarterback have a nice rapport going. I think Zach Ertz and Carson Wentz, that's going to be a really, really valuable fantasy connection this year. I think, Zach Ertz was clearly his most reliable target, caught all of his targets this week, and I think, look for more of the same in the weeks to come.
Want to really talk about, really quickly, talk about defense/special teams and kickers. Kickers not as much, but there were a lot of defenses that scored a ton of points last week or this week. I keep on saying Rams, who played the Indianapolis Colts, Jaguars, who played the Houston Texans, Eagles, who played the Washington Redskins, the Ravens, who played
Bengals,
the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Steelers, who played the Cleveland Browns. So all 5 of these defenses, their opponents whoever those offenses are playing, I would pick up those defenses as streaming options. We talked about streaming a little bit earlier, but any team playing the Indianapolis Colts if they still don't have Andrew Luck, pick up that defense and play it. Any team that's playing the Houston Texans because they have Tom Savage or Deshaun Watson throwing it, pick that defense up and play it and feel good about it. That's what you do with streaming defenses.
Yeah, I think the exception of that list is the Eagles, who played the Washington Redskins. Yep. I think that's more about the Eagles being a good defense than it is about Washington being a bad offense. Obviously, Kirk Cousins turns the ball over a bit, but That's still a pretty good offense. I just think the Eagles are really scary on defense. That's a team that if you were lucky enough to kind of like pick them at the end of your draft, I would hang on to them. Obviously, they may not give you that production every week, but I think more often than not, they're going to be a good fantasy defense for you. And real quick, before we move on, I'm not a gambling man, but watching Scott Tolzien attempt to play quarterback this week really is making me reconsider my life choices. I think I might just liquidate all my assets and put them on all of the Colts opponents the rest of the year until Andrew Luck's back. That was some of the worst football I've seen in my life.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that they traded for Jacoby Brissett now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. If you see Indianapolis playing against a waiver wire defense, I don't care who it is, pick them up.
Honestly, one quick thing about that too. If they're playing Tolzien, absolutely pick them up. If Jacoby Brissett takes over that quarterback position, I would be a little bit more wary about that because Jacoby Brissett started a game for New England when Tom Brady was out with suspension last year. Led them to I think they won that game, but did kind of like ate the defense up a little bit. So just be careful if Jacoby Brissett is starting for the Colts. I would still play that defense, but definitely Tolzien play that defense. Kickers really quickly. Oakland. So Sebastian Janikowski got hurt and he's out for I think 5 or 6 weeks. Giorgio Telvecchio was their kicker on Sunday and went 4 for 4 with 2 extra points and looked like a stud. He got like 19 points. Streaming option, picking up him, Telvecchio?
Yeah, just based on how good Oakland's offense is, I think he's definitely an option. And even when Janikowski comes back, which, they're probably going to obviously drop Telvecchio, which is, pretty tragic. But, whoever's kicking for Oakland, I would consider because their offense is really good.
Yeah. Now, a couple others. Greg Zuerlein on Los Angeles Rams, 3 for 3, 5 extra points. The Legatron, if you will, his nickname. Crushed it.
That's amazing.
Dan Bailey, 4 for 4, 1 extra point. He's a NFL, one of the leaders in NFL history with Justin Tucker for like field goal percentage, so no surprise there. But those are, if you need a kicker, Greg Zuerlein didn't really get drafted. Telvecchio didn't really get drafted, so keep those names in mind.
Really quick before we move on, I just want to quickly go back to that defensive group that you just mentioned. So we had the Rams, Jacksonville Jaguars, Philadelphia Eagles, Baltimore Ravens, and Pittsburgh Steelers. They obviously led the position groups in points this week. Those are coincidentally 5 teams that weren't drafted super high defensively, at least, and those are 5 really good young defenses that could easily become top 5 NFL defenses this year if things break right. So keep your eye on them. A lot of people like to stream week to week, but if the Rams keep, crushing quarterbacks, obviously they played Scott Tolzien, so we don't know, but if they, come out with a nice week 2, it might be a team that you don't even need to stream anymore. You just play the Rams all year.
Yeah. So those again are Rams, Jaguars, Eagles, Ravens, and Steelers.
And don't forget about Jimmy Bickle. I've been talking about him since week 1. Well, wait, it is week 1.
All right, now that we're done with our blue chip players, week 1, we're going to be talking about our duds. Week 1 duds.
Fuck.
Guys that did terribly compared to. Oh. Start that over.
Sorry, I got to take this call. Awesome. All right, we're good. Sorry about that. We're good.
No, you're good. I'll just start over. No problem.
Cool.
All right, now that we talked about the blue chip guys for week 1, we're going to be talking about the duds next. So these are guys that did not live up to their projections, did not live up to their draft status. All in all, it's week 1, so don't freak out about anything. We're going to tell you who the guys that you should freak out about are. Quarterbacks, there were a lot of pretty mediocre performances. Some notable ones were Russell Wilson, didn't have any touchdowns, was 50% completion, 158 yards. I wouldn't worry about him. He's still QB1. Kirk Cousins didn't look great, but again, week 1, he should be fine. He should bounce back and potentially be a top 10 guy. Couple other guys, Tom Brady looked pretty bad on Thursday, but again, also should be fine. Don't overreact about quarterbacks, basically, and just kind of ride the wave with these guys. You draft them as your quarterback 1, stick with them. Running back situation is a little different. I'm going to take complete blame for this right now. Eddie Lacy, Seattle Seahawks running back, had 5 carries for 3 yards and was on the field for 7 snaps. So, it's pretty bad, and he doesn't even look like he should. I don't even think he's going to be. I honestly think he's going to get cut from this team. He just looked like complete shit, and I apologize about that to everyone.
Hey, Scott, remember when you said him and Marshawn Lynch should be switched in the rankings?
I do remember saying that, and I remember drafting him in like the 5th round, and that was the dumbest idea ever. So
sounds like a real goof.
Yeah, honestly, hold on to him until like week 4 or 5, but they didn't even have Thomas Rawls on the field, and Chris Carson, who is a rookie, was supposed to be the 4th guy on that team, got more carries, more looks in the passing game, more snaps than Eddie Lacy. So just hold on to him, but I think you need to pick up Chris Carson. We're going to get to that in a little bit. Le'Veon Bell, consensus 1st or 2nd overall pick, 10 rushes, 32 yards, 3 receptions, 15 yards. Not a good first game.
I'm not too worried about this. I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that he wasn't in training camp until the last week. And again, they're probably trying to ease him back into action. I think they didn't really need him against the Browns, so they didn't run him into the ground. I think he will bounce back. Maybe not next week because he's playing Minnesota's defense, who just looked really good against the Saints. So you might be waiting till week 3 till you get your breakout Bell performance.
Yeah, just stay the course with him. He'll be fine. He'll be a top 5 running back like he usually is. Those are the running backs that were duds. Wide receivers, we had 3 guys that were kind of duds. So T.Y. Hilton, 3 receptions, 57 yards, a fumble. Looked, he's a good player, but if he doesn't have someone that could throw it deep, like Scott Tolzien couldn't, he's not going to get the looks that Andrew Luck would have given him. So be wary of T.Y. Hilton, which we told you in the beginning, if Andrew Luck is not there. Another guy, Martavis Bryant, who came back from suspension, your boy. This is your worst call of the week.
Yeah,
2 receptions, 14 yards. Didn't look the part of the number 2 guy there behind Antonio Brown.
Yeah, Antonio Brown absolutely went off this week. You saw Jesse James, we mentioned, got a lot of red zone work with 2 touchdowns. So obviously, in an offense this good, somebody's going to be left out week to week, and that's the danger of playing Martavis Bryant. But I will say, as disappointing as it was, I think when teams are better defenses, I think we'll see Bryant play better because then they're going to need to spread the ball around a little bit better than they did this week. I would say the course with him, he's obviously still in the wide receiver 3 flex, high-end flex range. So, maybe this game dissuades you from playing him next week. I still like this guy year long, but, it might take him a little bit of time to, work himself back into the offense.
Yeah, he was out for a whole year. I would say he's a wide receiver 3 or 4 right now. So, again, you don't want to overreact after week 1, but be wary of Martavis Bryant as your starter. I would put him on your bench next week. Another guy to probably do the same thing with Jamison Crowder on Washington, wide receiver, 1 reception, 15 yards, had a fumble, didn't look great in the slot. That whole team was off. That offense was not clicking, so I would give it a couple of weeks until Kirk kind of figures it out. But I would say Crowder is still a wide receiver 3 there. Moving along to the tight end position for duds of week 1. We had 2 main notable guys. I would even throw Gronk in there. I don't think we have him in here, but Gronk only had 30-something yards, 32 yards. He should still be a top 5 tight end as long as he's healthy, but looking like maybe 4th or 5th tight end, not 1st or 2nd. A couple of guys, Tyler Eifert on the Cincinnati Bengals, 1 reception, 4 yards.
Oof, this whole team looked absolutely terrible against the Ravens. Obviously, part of that is the Ravens are a pretty good defense, but Andy Dalton might have been the worst player outside of Scott Tolzien this week. And obviously that's going to hurt his targets. Eifert more than anybody. 1 reception, opening week. He's fully healthy. That's not good enough. A lot of people drafted this guy to be a low-end tight end 1 with, high upside, as far as red zone action goes, and you just didn't get it this week. Hopefully he didn't kill you, but I bet he did.
And he's their red zone threat, and they didn't get close to the red zone, so he should get more looks. He'll be better than 1 reception for 4 yards, but he's a low-end tight end 1. Just plain and simple. Jimmy Graham, Seattle Seahawks, this offense looked terrible against Green Bay, but Green Bay had a pretty under-the-radar and sneakily good defense last year, so I would chalk it up to that, and Jimmy Graham will be fine. He's still got a couple of targets, not the most on the team, but 3 receptions, 8 yards. Not a good stat line, but again, should still be a tight end 1 there.
Yeah, he got some red zone looks, didn't convert, but still, I like this guy, kind of like Eifert. Both these guys, I don't mention them in our buy low targets, but these are 2 guys that if you can, definitely worth trying to acquire. Okay, and now it's time to get to probably my favorite part of fantasy football, which is the waiver wire time. It's time to consider which guys to pick up, which guys to drop, which guys are going to win you your league by coming out of nowhere. So what we're going to do in this segment every week is go over some of the hot names on the waiver wire list, guys we think you should pick up, the reasons why you should pick these guys up, and we're going to talk a little bit about who you probably should drop and other people that won't be on the waiver wire that you could try to buy low because they're not playing as well as they should. So, number 1 name this week, Scott, I know you're going to like this guy, Tariq Cohen on the Chicago Bears, running back, owned in only 7.5% of leagues. He had a really, really good game. He was one of our blue chip guys. What do you think?
Yeah, honestly, the coolest part about his stat line, he had 8 receptions, 47 yards, 1 touchdown. That was with Jordan Howard healthy. So Jordan Howard was their bell cow back last year, obviously. Tariq Cohen, small guy, he's 5'7" or 5'6", 180. So he's kind of like a Darren Sproles type, but he had 13 targets. 12 targets and 8 receptions. Now that they have Kevin White out for the year, their wide receiver, they're going to be playing catch up probably a lot because that defense isn't good. Tariq Cohen's going to probably get, he's going to push for like 80 receptions all year.
Yeah, and on top of that, he had 5 rushes and was really explosive with those touches. He had 66 yards on the ground. And the best thing, you hit it right on the head, with this is with Jordan Howard in the game. So I think he's, moving forward, he's a nice flex option. Obviously, I wouldn't start him every week, but when he has a good matchup, this is a guy that I would really like in my lineup. I think, this is assuming, of course, that Chicago does what they should do and play 21 or 22 personnel with both Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen in the game. Real quick, 21 personnel just means that there's 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and 22 is 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. They, with Kevin White going down, they don't have the wide receiver depth to really play a lot of wide receivers on the field. So why not use your 2 best players at the same time?
That's fancy as hell. 21 and 22 personnel.
Right?
Damn. That's
I'm
sexy
learning.
Sounding. Oh,
all right.
You're going to learn
Let's
today.
move on. I think he is probably top of the list just because he's a running back. This guy, if you need wide receiver depth, would be my top option to pick up. We already talked about him a little bit. Kenny Golladay on the Detroit Lions. What else is there to be said about this guy? He's a red zone monster. You get a shade of Calvin Johnson, obviously not the whole deal, but this guy is a really good NFL player, and he's not playing a full-time role yet. If he does, the sky's the limit for this guy. Anything to add?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we've already said he got a ton of preseason hype, and it looks like that hype was justified. And again, he was a part-time player. Once he gets going, once he gets a full-time role and carves that out in this offense, I think he already overtook Marvin Jones as the second best wide receiver there behind Golden Tate. And with the amount of times they throw the ball, you need to pick him up if you need a wide receiver. Kenny Golladay, Detroit.
Yeah, and number 3 on this list, Austin Hooper. We already talked about him a lot in this podcast. I, clearly love this guy. I might be, in too deep. I might not have any perspective here because I picked this guy up off the waivers in one of my leagues, and he won me that week. So to me, just seeing this guy run down the field for what was it, like a 60, 70-yard touchdown, what's better in fantasy football than seeing that? This guy's an explosive
From a tight end.
from a tight end, this guy's an explosive option for a really, really good offense. It doesn't get much better on the waiver wire in week 1.
Yeah. The only thing that scares me is the 2 targets, and he got two receptions. Again, this game was kind of weird. The Bears really stuck with the Falcons. Falcons defense looked off, so they were playing catch up, and when they played catch up, they force feed it to Julio. I think with Steve Sarkisian being the new offensive coordinator, they're working out the kinks. Hooper, 3rd round pick out of Stanford 2 years ago, looks the part. He had an amazing play there. I think Matt Ryan, he's going to get Matt Ryan's trust. So I would keep on looking for his targets to trend up, but definitely pick him up if you have like a Jack Doyle type or even a Gronkowski type. If you need another tight end, Austin Hooper is the guy to get.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of stick with the tight end theme here, before we get to some of our other guys. Would you rather have Austin Hooper, Charles Clay, or Coby Fleener? A lot of those 3 guys are going to be available in a lot of leagues.
Yeah, honestly, it's tough to say. I think long term, Austin Hooper has the most upside, like long term for this team. He has Matt Ryan throwing it to him. If you look at Charles Clay, Tyrod Taylor is the one throwing it to him. They don't have a lot of options there, but we kind of know what Charles Clay is at this point in his career. He's been around for a while. Coby Fleener drops a ton of balls, and honestly, the only reason he got a lot of targets in that game against Minnesota is because they were playing catch up, and hopefully they don't have to do that all year. And that Michael Thomas steps it up, and I think that'll take some away from Coby Fleener. Also, once their slot guy Willie Snead comes back from suspension, that'll take some looks away from Fleener as well. So honestly, Austin Hooper for the rest of the year, I think is a better option. Most upside.
That's music to my ears.
Yeah.
All right. This is something that is not going to make you too happy as a Lacy truther. Chris Carson, my number 4 waiver wire pickup of the week, owned in only 4% of leagues. Not anyone saw this coming. 6 rushes for 39 yards, 1 reception, 10 yards. This is more about the snap count than it is about his production. He played more snaps than Lacy and Procise, and Rawls is still banged up. I can see this guy winning this job outright, so that's really why he's here. Obviously, this is not a guarantee, but there's few guarantees out there in waiver land.
Yeah, and this kills me as a guy that was put all my stock into Lacy early in this preseason. Lacy just looks washed up. 5 rushes, 3 yards. Carson had 6 rushes for 39 yards. This whole running game looked like crap, honestly, on Sunday. But you got to look at Pete Carroll. He's willing to give an unknown the rock. You look at what Thomas Rawls did a couple years ago. He came out of nowhere and got 800 yards on very minimal carries. So Chris Carson could be the guy there in this backfield. This offense and this game was really weird. So I think you need to pick up Carson if you own Lacy or Rawls. I would honestly give Carson and Lacy the best chance to come out of this backfield because Rawls is always hurt and Procise is more the pass-catching guy. So pick up Carson if you need a backup running back, potential home run hit here that could take that backfield over.
Yeah, let's stick with the NFC West depth running backs here with Kerwin Williams. We mentioned him in the beginning of the podcast a little bit. He's only owned in 1% of leagues, so I bet David Johnson owners are going to scramble to the waiver wire this week. This week he had 5 carries for 10 yards, 1 touchdown. But obviously, more importantly, he seems to be in line for more work with David Johnson out indefinitely. The Cardinals might pick up Chris Johnson. There's news about a little bit of hype surrounding Ryan Matthews. Andre Ellington is still there, so I view Williams as more of a shot in the dark than a true handcuff. Clearly, no one else thought he was a handcuff if he's only owned in 1% of leagues. So I would pick this guy up just on the off chance that he wins this job to himself. If not, I can more realistically seeing him being like a flex play at best. I don't think any Arizona running back is really going to be the guy. And if one guy does wind up being the guy, I don't really think it's going to be Kerwin Williams. I think it might be a guy that's sitting on the couch right now. Yeah.
None of these backups behind David Johnson really instill confidence, and they don't do what David Johnson does, right? Yeah. David Johnson is all-around back. He's running through the tackles. He's running the outside. He's fast. He punishes defenders when he's running through them. He catches the ball. Kerwin Williams doesn't do that. He's a small, diminutive guy. 5 carries, 10 yards, 1 touchdown. He's not an in-between the tackle runner. Honestly, I think you need to put in a waiver wire claim for Kerwin Williams, and he's 5th on our list. I absolutely agree with that. I think you really need to look at Andre Ellington. Ellington was supposed to be the starter 2 years ago, and that's the year that David Johnson came out and won that job. But Andre Ellington has the pedigree there. 5th round guy out of Clemson a couple of years ago. He could be the home run threat, and honestly, he could overtake Kerwin Williams. So if you don't get Kerwin Williams, if let's say you won this week and the guy that lost and had the least points for had the best waiver pickup and got Kerwin Williams, don't feel bad about getting Andre Ellington as a backup guy there. He could get that job.
Oh, that's a great call. I really like that take right there. Let's go to a little bit more of a positive waiver pickup. Someone that actually played well and isn't just getting picked up because somebody else got hurt. Cooper Kupp, Los Angeles Rams wide receiver, only owned in 15% of leagues. This guy had 6 targets with 4 receptions for 76 yards and 1 touchdown. Very similar to the guy we're going to talk about next, Nelson Aguilar, had really great chemistry with his young quarterback. I really like Cooper Kupp for the rest of the year. What do you think?
Yeah, the role that he has there is the 3rd best wide receiver, right? They got Sammy Watkins as the outside guy. They got Robert Woods as their number 2 wide receiver. Watkins did pretty well, which is good to see. Because there's a lot of question marks about like him coming from Buffalo and will he mesh with Goff? Looks like they did. Cooper Kupp looks like the 3rd best guy, the slot guy, but he looked really good in limited action. I mean, 4 receptions is good, but 6 targets is good as well. But winning by 40 points against the Colts, you have to think like, is Cooper Kupp's long-term fantasy value this year kind of capped? And it might be. Watkins is the guy there. Goff isn't going to throw it a ton. They still ran it a lot, but I think you still need to put in a claim for Kupp as basically the number 2 guy there. He overtook Woods as the second favorite option there. And Goff looked really poised. He looked really good this year or this week.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Sean McVay had an excellent game plan to really just dismantle the Indianapolis defense. And the thing I like about Kupp the most, obviously Watkins is still going to be the top dog there, but he's a little bit more flexible than Robert Woods. I think Robert Woods is more of just a speed outside guy. Cooper Kupp can play in the slot, really good hands. He had a really, really nice one-handed catch where he tipped the ball and brought it down. Yeah. This guy's he's a good player, which is why we're endorsing him here. Talent eventually wins out. So that, it might not be, the most sexy pickup, but this guy, by the end of the year, could be a solid flex play.
Yeah. 100%.
All right. Now, I mentioned him a little bit with Cooper Kupp. He's in a very similar situation. Nelson Aguilar, Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver. This guy got a lot of hate from me preseason.
And me. And everyone.
And you. He did not look good his first couple years in the league. He's only owned in 5% of leagues. But he had a pretty nice stat line in week 1. 8 targets, 6 receptions, 86 yards, and 1 touchdown. And, just like Kupp and Goff, Aguilar seems to have a really nice rapport with Wentz. Wentz looked for him on that crazy play you mentioned earlier. And Aguilar looks like a new player. Very intriguing for me this week.
I mean, you got to think about it. Like he was a first-round pick 2 years ago from USC. He has the pedigree. He just had a ton of drops, and he really didn't put it together his first 2 seasons. This year, now that Jordan Matthews is gone, he was supposed to be the 3rd best guy, but I mean, Carson Wentz didn't even look for Torrey Smith, who's supposed to be their 2nd best guy. So honestly, I think it goes Alshon Jeffrey and then Nelson and Aguilar in the wide receiver core there. One thing to keep in mind, Alshon Jeffrey had Josh Norman shadowing him the whole game, so they really shut him down. What's probably going to happen is Aguilar won't get 8 targets or 6 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown. He'll probably have steady wide receiver 3 or 4 value, but Alshon Jeffrey should be back to his top 10 ways after this week. I think it was a little bit of an outlier, but I still think Aguilar could be the 2nd best wide receiver on this team.
Yeah, and this next guy is probably a little bit lower on this list than he should be, but that's more about his matchup next week, which we'll get to. But Alex Smith, our number 1 ranked quarterback after week 1, barring the late Monday night game. He's only owned in 28% of leagues. My question is, who the hell is this guy? He looked like a completely different player. Looked downfield, which he never does. Honestly, he had a fantastic week 1. But the reason he's so low on this list is he has a tough matchup week 2 against Philly. I think it's going to bring him back down to earth. I still think he's a good quarterback depth option, but I'd really only pick him up if I really need quarterback help.
Yeah, the only reason you should be picking up Alex Smith is if you're in a 2 quarterback league and you need a second quarterback. Maybe you had like Andy Dalton as your second quarterback, and he just stunk it up. I would take Alex Smith over Andy Dalton the rest of this year. The other thing to keep in mind, Alex Smith, they drafted Patrick Mahomes in the first round this year.
Yeah.
So Alex Smith might be feeling the heat a little bit. The guy breathing down his neck. It looked like they really opened up that playbook for him and played to his strengths, which actually looked like medium passes, which has never been the case for him. He's always been a check down king, but looked really good.
Yeah, he might have been seeing a little bit of deja vu. This guy lost his job to Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco, and know he is a professional football player. He doesn't want that to happen again. So he probably told these guys, hey, open up the playbook a little bit for me. That's what I'm guessing happened, and I hope that's the case for the rest of the year because the Chiefs looked really, really good week 1.
Yeah.
All right, so our last player, we already touched on Charles Clay a little bit. We'll talk about him in a second, but Chris Thompson, Washington Redskins running back, owned in 62.1% of league, so more than the rest of these guys, but had a pretty nice stat line in week 1, 3 carries for 4 yards. Wasn't great, but he had 5 targets, 4 receptions, 52 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. For me, this is just based on the fact that I think he's a really good player who is going to play on all the passing downs for Washington, so that could be a lot of snaps.
Yeah, and you look at Rob Kelly, the starter there, the in-between the tackles guy, had 10 carries, 30 yards, nothing really to write home about, no catches. Chris Thompson was the pass catcher there. And with Washington's defense the way it is, not that good. They're going to be playing catch-up a lot. Chris Thompson's going to be on the field a ton. So especially in PPR leagues, points per reception leagues, or even half-point points per reception leagues, Chris Thompson is an absolute pickup. He's owned in a lot of leagues, but if he's still in your league somehow, pick him up. Even in regular leagues, I would pick him up.
Yeah, I agree. And number 10, rounding out the top 10 waiver wire pickups this week, Charles Clay, owned in 7% of leagues. He had a nice 9 targets for 4 catches, 53 yards, and 1 touchdown. This is just based on the fact that he is the only receiver right now for the Buffalo Bills that is, going to have any relevance. Zay Jones did not have a good week 1, so Tyrod Taylor needs to throw the ball to somebody, and for right now, it looks like it's going to be Charles Clay.
Yeah, we talked about Hooper before. I like Hooper's longer-term value this year over Charles Clay, but Charles Clay is like right there. I think he could almost crack the top 10. He'll be like a top 15 option. So if you need another tight end, pick up Clay. He's only owned in 7% of leagues, and he had 9 targets.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're going to get into a little bit of a deeper dive. We mentioned the Rams offense looking good against Indy. A couple of quarterbacks to consider in 2 quarterback leagues: Jared Goff, Deshaun Kaiser of the Cleveland Browns, and Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans. 3 not rookies, two rookies, and Goff, who's coming back for his second year. Which of these young quarterbacks do you like the most? Which one would you consider picking up this week?
Yeah, honestly, if I had to pick up one of these guys, it would be Jared Goff, just because of the eye test that we always talk about. He looked very poised in that offense. McVay looks like he really changed that team around. Again, they were playing the Indianapolis Colts, but Goff was first overall last year for a reason. He has a great arm, and now he has weapons around him with Watkins, Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp. I would want to have Goff over those 2 rookies. Deshaun Watson got hurt already and is kind of being thrown into the fire. Same with Deshaun Kaiser in Cleveland, and Deshaun Kaiser doesn't really have that many options. So I would kind of stay away from those 2 for now, and just wait and see on them.
Yeah, I agree. I think McVay's a really good coach, and I think Goff's going to have similarly good stat lines all year. I think we talked a little bit about Andre Ellington already. We talked about Kobe Fleener, Jason Witten, Jesse James, all names to consider, if you're in a really deep league. Jermaine Kearse had a good stat line for the Jets week 1. Obviously his upside is capped, but keep him in mind. 2 guys that we want to end off on here: Paul Richardson of the Seattle Seahawks and Marlon Mack of the Indianapolis Colts. Both these guys are very deep sleepers right now, but Seattle's offense is not going to look as bad as it did week 1 the whole year. I think Richardson's a really nice option as the second wide receiver in that offense. And Marlon Mack is not Frank Gore, so that he's a solid option in the Colts backfield. And obviously that offense does not look good at all right now, but if they're going to have any semblance of, consistency, I think Mack might be the guy to get it going for them.
Yeah, and you look at the stat line for Indianapolis, again, they were down, so they didn't really run it a lot, but Frank Gore was a starter who's been in the league for years, since 2006. Frank Gore had 10 carries, 42 yards, no touchdowns, 1 target, 1 catch, 10 yards. Look at Marlon Mack. He got almost the same amount of work. He had 10 carries, 24 yards, so not that good there. 1 touchdown, which is really good to see. And then he had 1 target, 1 catch, 21 yards. So honestly, they already split the backfield duties here with Frank Gore, the veteran, and Marlon Mack, the rookie. Honestly, I would love to pick up Marlon Mack in a lot of leagues because he could take that backfield over, especially if you look at the fact that they don't have Luck and that deep threat like T.Y. Hilton. Once Luck comes back, maybe in a couple weeks, Marlon Mack could be the starter there and could have really good value as a running back, maybe 3. So I would stash him on your bench, pick him up and stash him for now, but he could take that backfield over. That has some value.
Yeah, you heard it here first. All right, now, all these guys we'd like you to pick up. Obviously, we need to cut some guys loose. These are some guys that we think are pretty likely to be cuttable in redraft leagues. Obviously, keep an eye on David Johnson. If he does have surgery and they say he's done for the year, obviously let him go. It's going to pain you to do it, but you got to do it. Same
Unless
thing with
you're
Kevin
in
White,
Keeper League.
Allen Robinson. Oh, yeah, no, don't do that in the Keeper League.
Yeah.
Good call.
Keep
Good
him.
thing we mentioned that.
Dynasty leagues or Keeper leagues, keep David Johnson. Do not drop him, but in redraft leagues, which is most of the standard leagues, if he has surgery and he's out for the year, he's on the IR, you can feel okay about dropping him.
Yeah, similarly, Kevin White, cut him loose. Allen Robinson, cut him loose. A couple guys that I think are probably, droppable at this point if I own them. Duke Johnson didn't look good at all. Crowell didn't look good either, but Duke Johnson barely touched the ball in week 1. Jeremy Hill, same thing. He's fully, he's pretty much healthy and on the field and didn't get anything going. He just doesn't look nearly as good as the other 2 guys there, and that's not saying much. For me, Kenny Britt, too. This guy didn't have a good week 1, and I think Corey Coleman is kind of emerging as the number 1 option there. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, honestly, Corey Coleman had a touchdown and 5 catches there and looked like Deshaun Kaiser's favorite target. They had a lot of hype of Kenny Britt going into this offseason, but we know what he's like as a player. He's only had 1 year. He's been in the league for a while now, but he's only had 1 year where he's at 1,000 yards plus. And now he's on Cleveland with Deshaun Kaiser throwing it to him, a rookie throwing it to him. I think you could actually safely drop Kenny Britt. If Corey Coleman's available, I would try to pick up Coleman in Britt's stead. But I think he's safely droppable. The other guys, really want to quickly talk about Kevin White, out for the year with that shoulder injury. Allen Robinson, tore his ACL, out for the year. You can drop those guys. And then Kenny Britt is just in terms of talent and like how he did in week 1, I didn't look good.
Yeah, I kind of see this next guy in a similar situation, but I think he's a much better player and on a better team too. Eric Decker didn't put up much of a fight in week 1. He got a couple of red zone targets, which is giving me pause about dropping him, but Corey Davis, man, he looked really good week 1, and Rashard Matthews had a pretty productive game too. Delaney Walker's still there. They still have those 2 really, really good running backs, so Decker might get himself lost in the pecking order here. Maybe not cutting bait on him yet, but he's someone that I'm, raising the eyebrow on. I might drop this guy in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, honestly, if you have like a exciting prospect like a Kenny Galladay or Tariq Cohen or Chris Carson, any of those guys that we mentioned, I would feel totally fine about dropping Eric Decker. Obviously, he's a big red zone threat, and Mariota is incredible in the red zone. In his career, he's like 35 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, and Decker is like the second best red zone catcher in the last like 5 years. But if he's in 3rd in the pecking order behind Corey Davis, who wasn't even a full-time player in week 1, and Rashard Matthews, and maybe the 2 running backs and the tight end Delaney Walker, then you could cut bait with him and feel fine about it. He's getting older now, coming off a injury last year. 2 other guys that I don't know if you mentioned them or if we want to mention them that didn't do that well. Marvin Jones, Kenny Galladay has taken that job over pretty much.
Yep,
I think
I
you could
agree.
drop Marvin Jones on the Detroit Lions, and then Josh Doxson on the Washington Redskins didn't do like anything. And it looks like it's Terrell Pryor and Jamison Crowder to a lesser extent team.
Yeah, and if you're looking real quick, if you're looking to pick up one of those kickers that had a great week 1, maybe Telvecchio, I wouldn't be afraid to jump ship on Adam Vinatieri. Not anything wrong with him, but the Colts are just really bad. So I wouldn't mind dropping Vinatieri to pick up a kicker that put up some nice points in week 1. Moving on really quick, just before we move on to the next segment here, our buy low targets. I think these are guys that you should target. See, just put the feelers out. See if you can get these guys at a really big discount in a trade. T.Y. Hilton, Joe Mixon, Doug Baldwin, Russell Wilson, Odell Beckham Jr. All five of these guys disappointed big time in week one. Not so much with Baldwin, but if you can get these guys at a really nice discount, I think they're going to have a really good second half of the year. So definitely worth trying to get them while you can.
Yeah, I agree. T.Y. Hilton on the Colts should do better with luck back. Joe Mixon had the most carries in that Cincinnati backfield, more than Jeremy Hill, more than Giovanni Bernard, but he did terrible with them. He didn't do anything with them. Doug Baldwin, Seattle Seahawks, him and Russell Wilson on Seattle should do better. That passing game just looked in a funk. And then Odell Beckham was out, but he should be fine moving forward for long term.
Get these guys while you can. We'll be back next week with more waiver options. Obviously, probably a fresh new batch. Early in the season, the waiver wire is crucial. This is where you win or lose your league, especially the first couple weeks, because it doesn't take long to see which players are going to be really good players this year. That's why I think picking up Tariq Cohen, Kenny Galladay, maybe Austin Hooper or a different tight end, that could make or break your team this year. So make sure you're paying attention, putting in those waiver claims, and you're getting ready for week 2.
Yep. And they also, really quick, they go in Tuesday night. So get them in tonight.
Yes.
Because it goes through
absolutely.
on Wednesday at 3 a.m. Get them in tonight.
Make sure you get Jimmy Bickle.
All right, so those are the waiver pickups. Any questions? Tweet at us, write us on Facebook, write us on Instagram. We'll help you out with waiver pickups. Unqualified.
Send us a
FF.
Raven.
Yeah, send us something. Now we're going to be looking ahead to week 2. We're going to be previewing it. So basically the structure for here is we're going to be talking about each position, 3 likes and 3 dislikes for each position matchup for next week. Actually, quarterbacks, we have a little bit more than that, but let's get right into it. Quarterback matchups we like in week 2. So this is basically taking into account their preseason draft stock, their talent level, the weapons around them, and also how they did in week 1. Maybe they're a couple of bounce back candidates, but week 1 matchups we like. Tom Brady and Drew Brees are playing each other. So New England at New Orleans. This is going to be a shootout. You just saw Drew Brees shoot it out with Sam Bradford. These two, I could see them racking up 3 touchdowns each, 250 yards. Big bounce back week for Tom Brady, week 2. Another matchup to look out for. Again, these two are playing each other. Aaron Rodgers and Matt Ryan. Green Bay at Atlanta. So Atlanta has a really good defense. Green Bay also does, but both of these guys are studs. They're quarterback ones. They should also both bounce back. And then a third matchup we like is Derek Carr versus the New York Jets. We do not like the Jets quarterback. We just like Derek Carr versus the Jets because the Jets are a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I think as we move into week 2, I think we're going to see teams become more of what they actually are as opposed to, the wacky stuff we saw in week 1. So I think all these guys are going to have good weeks. Obviously, we listed more than 3, but I think that New England-New Orleans game is going to be a shootout. Same thing with Green Bay and Atlanta. And then Derek Carr is going to torch the New York Jets next week.
Yeah, I can see 3 touchdowns for him too and 300 yards.
All right, really quick for 3 guys that we dislike. Alex Smith, we mentioned him before, playing against Philadelphia this week. Philadelphia is a really good defense. They're going to bring Alex Smith back down to earth after a big week 1. Big Ben playing against Minnesota. Minnesota similarly has a really, really good defense, and Ben didn't look quite right outside of, throwing to Antonio Brown. Obviously, he hit Jesse James inside for 2 touchdowns, but, that game against the Browns was a little bit too competitive for my liking. I like, Minnesota's defense this week against the Steelers. And lastly, the golden boy, Dak Prescott at Denver. Denver's got a really good pass defense. I think that Dallas is going to commit to the run game fully this week. They're going to try to beat Denver that way. So Alex Smith, Ben Roethlisberger, Dak Prescott, they're probably all viewed as like low-end QB1 options after this week. I wouldn't really trust any 3 of these guys in my lineup.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on to running back matchups we like and dislike. Hey, this is a theme here. So we like Marshawn Lynch, the Oakland Raider running back against the New York Jets. The Jets they're just fucking terrible. LaShawn McCoy had a great game. Mike Tolbert, who I forgot his name earlier in this pod, had a good game against the Jets.
I think the Jets forgot his name too.
Yeah, nice one. Marshawn Lynch. Honestly, he had 78 yards or 76 yards this week, and a good amount of carries, which is what you like to see. But he can have a big bounce back week in week 2 against the New York Jets. Another guy we like, Ezekiel Elliott. As much as it pains me to say this,
Boo!
There you go. Yeah, boom. Ezekiel Elliott still had a pretty solid game against the Giants, who had a pretty good run defense last year. Ezekiel Elliott is playing Denver, but again, like you said, they're probably going to be running it more with Denver's passing defense being so good. So again, probably a top 10 matchup here. And then another one that we like, Todd Gurley versus the Washington Redskins. So Todd Gurley didn't have a great yards per carry last week against the Indianapolis Colts, which you don't like to see, but he got the lion's share of carries. You got a TD vultured from him, but Redskins, he should bounce back, and I could see 100 yards and at least 1 touchdown for him.
Yeah, I like all 3 of those guys, and the dislikes are going to be kind of a run along a similar theme for me. Guys playing against really good defenses in situations that don't really bode well for their success. Carlos Hyde playing at the Seattle Seahawks this week. I think the Seahawks are really going to look to bounce back after losing to the Packers this week and, crush the 49ers. I like Hyde for the rest of the year, but not this week against Seattle. Isaiah Crowell did absolutely nothing in week 1.
Terrible.
I expect more of the same against Baltimore. Baltimore shut down the Cincinnati Bengals. I would not be surprised at all if they shut down the Cleveland Browns. So Crowell, I don't really like as an RB2 this week either. And lastly, this is going to be a little bit more out there, but DeMarco Murray at Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville is a very underrated defense still. They hurt every player on the Houston Texans this week. And, Murray is an injury-prone guy that, had a very slow start in week 1. So I don't love him this week. I don't love any of the Titans really this week. And I wouldn't be surprised if this guy finished outside of the top 30 this week and when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, one question for you. The tough part about these dislikes for running backs, especially, like quarterbacks is easy because you have one playing, but running backs, you're drafting like 4 or 5 guys and you're hoping these guys are studs. So when you drafted Carlos Hyde, when you drafted Isaiah Crowell, when you drafted DeMarco Murray, you're expecting to start them like every single week. So what's your strategy behind, Carlos Hyde, San Francisco running back against Seattle, at Seattle, Isaiah Crowell, Browns running back at Baltimore, DeMarco Murray, Tennessee running back at Jacksonville. Are you still playing these guys and we're just bumping them down in terms of rankings? You still got to play these guys, right?
Yeah, I think with Murray, you probably don't have any option that's going to get the ball as much as him, so I would still obviously play Murray as one of my top 2 running backs. Crowell, I would consider benching after a really bad week 1, but I wouldn't blame you at all for keeping him in your lineup. And same thing with Hyde. These guys are still going to be in your lineups. Just don't really be surprised if they don't help you win your week this week.
Yeah, and one thing to consider, like if you have a better wide receiver as your flex option, like let's say Carlos Hyde was your flex all year, for week 1, and you have a better wide receiver, maybe like a Michael Crabtree against the Jets, I would definitely put Crabtree in your flex spot over Hyde at Seattle.
Definitely.
That's one thing to consider. Yeah, these guys bump them down a little bit. All right, wide receivers that we like/dislike. There you go. Raiders wide receivers at the New York Jets. That's going to be a theme probably all year. But Amari Cooper, really quick on Amari Cooper, they force-fed him the ball, and he dropped 3 potential touchdowns, in the second quarter, I think it was, in their game at Tennessee. I don't think that's a harbinger of things to come. I think he's still a top 10 option. Michael Crabtree, I think he'll be a fringe wide receiver 1 this week at the Jets. Really like that matchup. Another guy that we really like is Brandon Cooks at New Orleans. So this is his homecoming. He was on New Orleans last year. This is going to be a shootout. He had 3 catches, 88 yards last week, which is okay, considering the tough defense he played. But New Orleans, they just let Adam Thielen rip them up for 9 catches, 150-plus yards. Brandon Cooks should be a top 5 or 10 option, honestly, this week.
He might go for 200 yards this week.
He could, honestly. And then another guy that we really like this week, Julio Jones versus Green Bay. He had an okay week 1, but I think he'll have a bounce-back week this week. Again, he's a top 5 option. I think you feel good about him.
Yeah, for guys that we dislike, I mentioned this a little bit before, the Titans wide receivers. I'm not high on the Titans this week against Jacksonville. I'm kind of in wait-and-see mode. Obviously, Corey Davis looked really good in week 1, but he's going to be matched up with either A.J. Boye or Jalen Ramsey, which are tough assignments either way you look at it. So I'm not crazy about Titans wide receivers this week. Des Bryant at Denver, similarly, he's going to be matched up against Aqib Talib or Chris Harris. Either way, that's a tough ask for Des. And the third guy that is a little bit of a buzzkill since we're telling you to pick him up off the waivers, Kenny Galladay. Definitely still pick him up, but maybe hold the phone on putting him in your lineup this week because Janoris Jenkins on the New York Giants is a really, really good football player. His nickname is Jackrabbit, I think, which is pretty cool. Cornerback on the New York Giants. He could easily shut down Kenny Galladay if he's not following Golden Tate around. So, pump the brakes on Kenny Galladay as far as putting him in your lineup right away, but definitely still pick him up.
Yeah. Let's move on to tight end matchups we like and dislike. So one that we like is obviously the Buccaneers tight ends versus Chicago Bears. So we saw Austin Hooper on 2 targets and 2 catches rip up the Chicago Bears last week. So right now the Bucs tight ends look pretty good. OJ Howard and then Cameron Brate. I think you had to wait and see with these guys what the target share is going to look like. They didn't play in week 1 because of Hurricane Irma, but I think you put Cameron Brate as a low-end tight end 1 and then O.J. Howard as a high-end tight end 2, maybe like a 2 tight end league if you have him. Another like that we have is Jimmy Graham on a bounce. Hopefully he'll bounce back this week at San Francisco. Reuben Foster, their stud inside linebacker on San Francisco, is out. So Jimmy Graham should eat up the middle of that field and bounce back from his 3 catches for 8 yards last week. And then another like Greg Olsen on the Carolina Panthers versus Buffalo. So, again, another bounce-back week that we're expecting from Greg Olsen.
Yeah, I love all 4 of those guys, really. I especially like Jimmy Graham against San Francisco. I think Seattle's going to get back on track this week. Our first dislike, I hinted at it before, Delaney Walker playing at Jacksonville. Look, there's a reason all 3 Houston tight ends were concussed this week. Jacksonville is trying to knock people out of the game. They are really embodying a new culture with Tom Coughlin running the show there. He's not the coach, but he's really the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. Pump the brakes on Delaney Walker. I think you still need to start him, but I would not be surprised if this guy, put up a low score this week. And then 2 other guys that kind of underperformed this week. Rob Gronkowski, we mentioned before. He's playing at New Orleans, which typically would be a really good matchup for him, but he doesn't look healthy to me. I think he looks kind of old, which is scary because he's not an old guy at all, but, clearly he's had a ton of injuries in his career and, maybe starting to slow down. Hopefully he's just trying to get back into shape, but does not look right. And my third dislike, Travis Kelce versus Philadelphia. Again, Philadelphia's a really good defense. Kansas City just put up 42 points on one of the best teams in the league, and Travis Kelce was not really a big part of that. So, if KC tries to lean on Kareem Hunt and Tyreek Hill week to week, Kelce might, get lost a little bit. I still think he's a really good player. You almost have to start him if you have him. But again, I'm not looking for a bounce back week this week. It's coming, but Philadelphia is a tough matchup for tight ends.
Yeah, and looking at, I want to break down those 2 tight ends, the last ones that you talked about, Rob Gronkowski and Travis Kelce.
Probably the first 2 drafted.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, that's why they're so notable. But Kelce had 7 targets last week, so he should be fine for the rest of the year. He'll still be a top 5 option, so don't worry about him. Don't freak out. Gronkowski, again, didn't look too healthy. They didn't really even give... it didn't look like he was part of the game plan at all. He had 6 targets, which, you're expecting 10 out of the consensus first overall tight end taken. He had 2 receptions, 33 yards. One strategy to have here is pick up an Austin Hooper or pick up the guy in what's the guy's name at Buffalo? Charles Clay. It's late. Pick up Charles Clay, and if Rob Gronkowski gets a questionable designation like at all this week and is questionable to play, I would think about benching him and putting in one of those other guys in his place.
Yeah, I agree. You saw last year Gronk killed a lot of people because not literally. He killed a bunch of fantasy teams.
Killed a guy.
Yeah. Gronk killed a guy. Well, he actually, really crushed some fantasy teams and, lost some people a lot of money because he'd be listed as questionable all week. He'd go out there, suit up, and then just be a decoy. Bill Belichick is not above that. So, again, if Gronk, he doesn't look right now, so if he is on the injury report, I would definitely consider what you said and pick up a nice guy that is going to get some nice looks, that doesn't have a ton of talented wide receivers around him. I really hope Gronk has a bounce back week and makes us look stupid here, but, he doesn't look right. So, eyebrows are raised.
Yeah, and then one Last thing that we want to talk about for week 2, streaming defenses. This is a theme that we have. So
Yes.
again, these are defenses that are playing pretty much bad offenses. And what we mean by that is offenses that throw a lot of interceptions, which the defenses get points for, give up a lot of sacks, recover a lot of fumbles, things like that. So the defenses that we're looking at for week 2 that are good matchups that probably weren't drafted, but that you should pick up. The Raiders, Oakland Raiders, are home versus the New York Jets. Pretty much anyone that's playing the New York Jets in any position, just play them.
Completely
just
agree.
trust us. Yeah. The Arizona Cardinals are at Indianapolis, so it's looking like Tolzien or Jacoby Brissett is going to start, play the Cardinals, and feel pretty good about them as a defense if they're not drafted. And then the Panthers are playing the Buffalo Bills. Bills don't have a ton of options besides LaShawn McCoy and maybe Charles Clay. So look for the Panthers defense to have some good points against Buffalo this week.
Yeah, one added note on the Panthers. Obviously LaShawn McCoy is more than enough to give anyone pause when considering a defense playing against Buffalo. But the Panthers have Luke Kuechly, and that's pretty much all I need to say about that. He is easily the best best linebacker in the league, in my opinion, and he's more than capable of shutting down McCoy by himself. So, even if Shady does go off for 100 yards and maybe a score, I would really look for Carolina to have a good week this week.
All right, so that wraps up our week 1 episode. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to be releasing 1 episode per week for the rest of the season on Tuesday. So the reason we're doing that is because all the waiver pickups, or the claims at least, go in on Tuesday night and are put through Wednesday morning at 3 a.m. So make sure you get your waiver claims in on those 10 guys. If you have any questions at all for week 2, should I start this guy over this guy in my flex spot? Which quarterback should I start? Anything like that. Tweet at us, write us on Facebook, UnqualifiedFF, at UnqualifiedFF.
Yeah, guys. Once again, thanks for everyone listening. We really appreciate the feedback. Make sure to leave us a review on iTunes. All you have to do is click on our podcast page and just leave us a review and a rating. That helps the show a lot. And then furthermore, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, like Scott said, because we're going to be releasing some visuals on Instagram with like player ratings. On Facebook, we're going to be doing polls. On Twitter, we're going to be doing polls, and we're going to be tweeting all injury updates and stuff that's like really you need to know on the spot. And that's about it.
Well,
see you later.